Welcome to Maker Camp.
Over the course of the summer, we've met with makers all across the world, but today we're celebrating the spirit of innovation in all of you. We're heading to our nation's capital, where we'll go to the White House for a very special field trip.
The White House Kitchen Garden celebrates the technology used to grow fresh food with the art and science of fine cooking.
It's the first field trip of its kind ever, and you're invited. Thank you for joining us on this special field trip to the White House Kitchen Gardens. I'm Camp Director Paloma.
I'm Camp Director Burke.
And I'm Camp Director Sam. We're joined today by campers from Tell Makers in Santa Monica, California. Hi guys.
Hey.
And also the Bernie Young Makers at Patrick Heath Public Library in Bernie, Texas. So welcome, guys. Is everybody excited to go on this field trip?
I think they're as excited as they could possibly be.
I love it. I love the
there.
enthusiasm.
Nice.
Wonderful.
So what have you guys been up to this summer?
We've been making projects, like the summer projects and the weekend projects. And
Awesome.
Jason here went to DC, and he has a scrapbook that he made of it. Right here. I have the White House one.
That looks great.
That's a great scrapbook right there.
Yeah, and very fortunate that you were able to be on with the White House Kitchen Gardens today. I'm so happy to share all of this with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And campers, your table is ready, and your meal is the White House Kitchen Gardens. Today, the White House Kitchen Garden is at the heart of how food is prepared for the first family and formal banquets. And creating all of those meals is the work of one remarkable maker. Please welcome White House Executive Chef Cristeta Comerford.
Hi guys, how are you doing?
We're great, and we're so happy to have you today.
And you saw the backdrop of the White House garden behind me, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
It looks great.
It looks
Isn't it amazing?
It's beautiful.
It looks wonderful. Chef Comerford, give us a background of the responsibilities as executive chef of the White House, and give us a little bit detail on how you pick those fresh vegetables that go into all the meals that you prepare.
The White House executive chef has a lot of great responsibilities. And of course, first and foremost, we have to take care of our president, the first lady and their families, of course, just for their daily meal requirements. But then at the same time, you have to look at the White House as being the quintessential home of America, where we entertain people and heads of state. So we also have to entertain visiting heads of state, like just a couple weeks ago, we have 50 heads of state from African countries and the chairman of the African Union. So it's a continuous place of work and a continuous place of entertaining, and we use the White House garden a lot for all of these meals.
Wonderful. And the White House has a long history, but the kitchen garden's actually relatively recent, starting with Michelle Obama in 2009. Why don't we take a look at where the idea for that came from?
Sure.
No work, no turnip, no tank, no flying fortress, no victory. Bear that in mind, all you victory gardeners, and work for victory.
This is the first vegetable garden since Eleanor Roosevelt's Victory Garden in World War II. When we look back at the records, was actually had a really tough time getting it established, and in the end, it was a plot, probably about the size of one bed that we have here, that one of the daughters of somebody who worked here tended to. So as a sort of really productive, feeding a lot of people garden, this is the first one in well over 100 years. The seeds that we're using from Monticello that Thomas Jefferson had passed down were given to us by Peter Hatch, who's the head gardener at Monticello. Thomas Jefferson, as more than any one man, changed the way we eat in this country and the way we grow food. When his ambassadors would go out all over the world, he would ask them to bring back seeds. And he's the first person to start seasonal growing. That is something that people are really sort of coming back to now and thinking about ways to, use a diversity of crops and keep growing.
It's so great to see how you've revived this tradition of making at the White House. And I was wondering if you could share with us how you cooking healthy meals at the White House connects to a larger vision of everyone being healthier.
Sure. The thing with the White House garden, it's not only a symbol of healthy living, it's also our educational tool for kids. We do host some tours for school children, their teachers, and their food service workers as well. So it serves for us as a really great platform to educate everyone, including parents. And then as for me, being the White House chef, it's so nice to have a luxury of just looking out in your backyard, and then there are fruits and vegetables and herbs that are available for use. How luxurious is that?
Sounds amazing.
Yeah,
That's really great.
great. At my garden at home, I absolutely love just being able to walk out and pick grapes and blackberries and tomatoes. It's the best thing.
It's really great, and especially during the summer months, as you see behind me. The back is so lush with a lot of vegetables and a lot of, like beautiful herbs and fruits. So for us, it's such a great opportunity to really let nature dictate what is good and what is right to cook. So it helps me as a chef to even plan menus, because looking at the garden, I know what to cook, I know when to serve it, and I know that it would taste the best when it's at the peak of the season.
It looks great. I just want to jump right through the screen and eat some.
Thank you.
Yeah, so can you maybe talk a little bit about Obama's vision for a healthier country and Michelle Obama's work in this field?
When Mrs. Obama, opened up the garden for public, I really think what her passion was is to make sure that our children would get the best nutrition and would get a very healthy lifestyle. Because, we know that there would be our future leader. And for me as well, I have a 13-year-old daughter. I want to make sure that what I feed my kids and even like people that I know and my friends are things that will sustain them, not just nutritionally, but something that would be better for them and healthier for them. So the garden serves as a great tool for us, and it's also a great opportunity for me to share the delicious side of White House cooking.
I'm so happy that this is something that you have all worked so hard on to bring to fruition, and that Michelle Obama's vision to connect this garden with healthier living has worked together. So let's take a look at a video on this mission.
The garden was something that I had always thought about. I was probably like most busy mothers. We were, a busy working family, and I would find it difficult to feed my family in a healthy way quickly. So I decided to change our diet, and this happened throughout the course of the campaign, and it was really simple things: adding more fruits and vegetables, trying to sit down as a family and prepare a meal a couple of times a week, eating out a little bit less, eliminating processed and sugary foods as much as possible. And I saw some really immediate results with just those minor changes. And I thought, well, if I could help other families kind of learn these small changes in my role as First Lady, that would be a good thing.
Wow.
It's great to see what how her vision has really come to fruition.
Yeah,
like that.
absolutely. Chef Comerford, I have a question about basically your keeping the garden operating full seasons. Now, it's really important to be able to produce all that fresh produce, but you're in DC. It's 4 seasons around there. What sort of technologies do you use to keep all the food that you eat and grow fresh?
One great thing about, the food and its availability, whenever we get luscious, like a whole lot of harvest. We do a lot of canning and jarring as well. Let me grab something in here that you might be able to see. We have some, just preserved cauliflower, pickled tomatoes. You can see it right there. And
Yum.
Wow.
one thing that we want to try to do is not just like use the fresh vegetable like at its fresh stage, but then also use the technology of preservation. I went to school in the Philippines, food technology, of course, and we talk so much about food preservation and how to keep it with its peak flavor and taste. And pickling and canning and jarring is one of those methods that we use. And also, I have to show you this wonderful jar of honey that we have. It came from our garden as well.
That's a lot of honey.
That's a lot of honey. Actually, last year we harvested over 100 pounds of honey just from our garden.
Wow.
So, but the thing is, this is some symbiotic relationship. You need the bees to keep your garden flourishing. So, and then the bees have something to feed from, the flowers of our pollinating garden. So, we try to make something that would really work for us. And then if we do get a lot of harvest, then we preserve some of this. We might dry some of these herbs for future use. And then also during the winter months when the winter is so harsh in Washington, D.C., we also use some netting and some tarp and something that could kind of like keep our vegetable kind of, still flourishing in spite of the harsh weather.
Yeah, it looks absolutely beautiful. And I have a question on my own because I absolutely love pickled vegetables. It's like one of my favorite things to eat. And they're great on sandwiches, so try it out. But I was wondering, do you have any tips for pickling vegetables that come from your own garden?
I think my best tip about pickling vegetables is only pickle the ones that you know that you're not going to eat in the meantime. Because, for example, like I have this cauliflowers that we had so much of, and I don't want to let it go to waste. So things that I will not consume for that particular moment, I might have to like pickle them. So like during the winter months when I feel like, hey, I knew I had some summer pickles in there, it still gives me the feel of a summertime. So it kind of draws me back to the garden, even though it's in the middle of winter, that I have access to vegetables that came actually from our garden. So that's a great opportunity for me. I think the second thing is that, use different flavors and, flavoring. Don't just, go for the normal, garlic, dill, pickle, recipe. Experiment and try things that, you might not be comfortable with before. And the more you try things and flavor, I think the more you develop your palate for different things.
Wow, which is such a great message to have, really. I mean, it's a major theme of Maker Camp in general is always try something new, try something different. Speaking of the garden back there, from your vantage point, can you give us a little tour of that? Can we see a little bit more of that?
Yeah, what's growing right behind you?
Yeah.
Sure. I think we're going to show you a pan of our garden right now.
Oh, it looks so beautiful.
Wow.
And you see it, we have a lot of things growing in there. Of course, during the summer, we got plenty of peppers, squash, kale. There's a lot of green beans in there. And basically every day, there's so much that we have to just walk in every morning to harvest whatever we can. And of course, things that we cannot use, we give one of our soup kitchens here in D.C. to make use of them as well.
That's great. That's so great to hear that
Really
not only are you providing this really great fresh produce for all of the people that come to visit the White House, but you're also giving some to your local community.
Yes, I think, our local community deserves to be treated with wonderful vegetables as well. So it's our, goal as well to make sure that anything that we are not using, or even there are times that we prioritize them to be on our list to be given such wonderful White House garden harvest.
Oh, you're doing a fantastic job. And you're giving them kale, which is really one of the best things you could possibly give them.
Oh, kale's so good.
Yeah.
I want kale right now.
So if I wanted to start my own garden, maybe at home or at school, what are some of the first steps I want to take?
One great thing about a garden, you don't have to have this big, like 1,500 square footage of land. A garden could start from your backyard. It could be in your front porch. So it could be anywhere. It could be in a rooftop. So there's a lot of ways that you could grow vegetables without having the land. You could use all of this, like, like old, like soda bottles that you could open and, make like vents from, so that when you fill them with soil and you plant your seed, that there's enough ventilation and there's enough sun. It's really a couple things that you need to grow your, your garden. You need your soil, you need your water, you need your food, you need sunlight, and that's pretty much available everywhere you go.
And I have a question. As a chef, what do you think are some great first dishes that our campers can try if they're just starting to cook with fresh vegetables and things like that?
I think start with a vegetable that you like first, and then once you kind of like evolve from, like, let's say it's broccoli is your favorite, try out different recipes with broccoli, and then branch out a little bit later on. Maybe I'm going to go to another broccoli family, which is the broccolini or the cauliflower, or like even a kale, and kind of like incorporate other textures and ingredients. And of course, there's a great importance to like mixing your texture, mixing the colors of food, because the more color you have in your plate, the more nutritional value you're getting out of it.
That's a great tip.
Yeah,
fascinating.
Now, do you have a preferred vegetable that, like, just a personal favorite?
I'm such a mushroom person. I love mushroom because they are so meaty, even though, like, I guess for vegetarians as well, it just creates so much flavor in everything that you cook, be it a soup, a burger, or it could be a fish. It could just be just a mixed vegetable. Once you start adding mushroom in there, it just takes it totally to a different plane of flavors.
It does. And there's so many different kinds to give you so many different textures too. They're fantastic. Excellent. I'm wondering, how do you balance the seasonal cycle of vegetables with the calendar of formal events? That seems like something that would be particularly challenging in your case.
It is very challenging because, like, sometimes nature is harsh. Like in the last November, December in the Washington, D.C. area, we have this great, kind of like polar vortex happening. So we did not have as much harvest as we want to have. We have some spinach and some kale that didn't quite make it. But then at the same time, there are like times when the harvest is so much and there's not, an event in sight. So what we try to do is that when we have harvests that are available and at the peak of its season, we want to make sure that it gets picked at the right time and served for that particular event. If not, what I'll try to do is that I might pickle it, and there's nothing wrong with freezing your products as long as you freeze it properly and then using it later on to be used for that event as well. So there's a lot of ways that you could, even though that nature might not be at your side, that you could kind of incorporate into planning your menus and executing it as well.
Now, is there like certain steps that you take to perhaps improvise? Say if I have a set of, I grow something and it doesn't really go as well as planned, is there a way to grow other additional plants or vegetables that can complement each other, or is that a different part of the process entirely?
I think, one thing with gardening, and people will find it as well, like on the first year, it might not be as successful as you want it to be, but you learn through the years that, hey, I think my kale would grow better if I move it at this side of the garden. So there's a lot of things that it's a learning process, but it's a cool thing because you learn a lot about nature and how it works together when you work in the garden as well. Like, so for me, like, the last couple years ago, my broccoli didn't do good at home because I've been planting it at the wrong side of the house. So I come to learn that, like, oh, if I, when it's moved here, it flourished better for me. So it's really a good learning process, and then hopefully by the time that you learn, you might not perfect it, but it will be better every year.
Wow.
Great.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
That's really great. Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for giving it. I didn't even know that about a lot of gardening and how much you can kind of experiment around with your different little spots and you can grow from that.
Yeah.
I think I actually have one more question I wanted to ask about, like seasonal planting when you have only a certain amount of area. Is there a preferred like if you're in one region, like say in DC, What are some of your like spring varieties of vegetables that you plant versus summertime, and do you have to adapt for the conditions as they have changed over the last couple seasons specifically?
Yes, like for example, in Washington, D.C., this particular year, our spring actually came pretty late because of our harsh winter. So we were not able to plant our peas early enough. But then when it was like the right moment and the right temperature, we were still able to plant spring vegetables. And then, but then at the same time, you might have a shorter period of spring, but then you might have to like change it to your summer vegetable once that is ready. So everything still has to be dictated by the temperature, by the season, and you just have to be very aware of just the differences of like, you know, any like 10-degree temperature outside could change your spinach solely the next day into frozen spinach. So you just have to be kind of like in contact or just really know what's going on with the weather in the weather report. So we do that pretty often.
Yeah, we've experienced that a lot around here too. I know in my garden we're always changing things. We're always getting new things. I mean, especially because we have the drought. We've been having a lot of lack of water in California, so we've been planting things that are water conscious, that don't need the extra water, that allows us to still have a plentiful harvest.
Yeah, and also I noticed that we're getting a lot of posts and questions from our campers, but I want to ask a little bit more about that. Well, that wonderful amount of honey you had there. I want to know about these bees, and I know there's a little video that we want to show about those bees. So let's check that out.
When we first got into the White House, I met Charlie, who was telling me about the bees that he kept at his house.
It really came together fast from there, and we got it in here in late March, and it's been doing good ever since. Curators have told me as well that they researched it somewhat, and they can't find any evidence of a hive here in the past. So, yeah, it's pretty cool to have the first one here for sure.
You know, bees are obviously essential to the process of growing food, being key pollinators, and so for kids who are coming to visit the garden to learn about these topics, it was a great opportunity to show them the whole cycle and process. So the day we harvested was just a wonderful day and really exciting. Charlie started off by smoking the bees out, which is, you know, old school.
When you put a couple puffs of smoke here at the entrance of the hive, it causes the guard bees to not be able to communicate as well, because a lot of the communication in the hive is by the sense of smell.
I mean, there's something a little disconcerting about, you know, being surrounded by thousands and thousands of bees.
There are probably at least 70,000 bees in this hive.
He pulled out each tray of comb, and they blew off all the bees from each tray.
You just blow them on out of there, and they fly on back up into the hive. The first harvest we did last year, we did it pretty early. We pulled out 12 capped frames.
And then brought that into the White House, and when we got in here, just cut open the comb, just the very top layer. He puts it in this machine that, with a hand crank, you spin really fast.
And uses centrifugal force to sling the honey out of the cells. So we went ahead, we extracted that way.
And you end up having like a big old bucket of honey.
We go ahead and let it settle for at least a week, I like to. Gets it nice and clear. Then, after that's been done, it's ready to put into bottles, containers, whatever size you want to do.
Wow. What an awesome video. That is just so cool to see that in action, especially with the using the centrifugal force.
I know, I was just thinking the physics in there is really cool.
Oh man. So Chef Chris, why don't we kick this off by telling us what are some of the things that you use honey for in your meals?
We use honey in a lot of our meals. I mean, you know, basic use of honey is just to use it in your yogurt with your fruits, but you could make dressings out of it. We make pralines out of honey. We use it a lot in different baking instead of regular processed sugar. We've used a lot of our recipes with honey as well. It's healthier and it's better for you. We use it also for cooking when I make like my gastric reduction. Instead of just using a normal sugar, I like the sweetness of honey. it imparts a different flavor. And then you also have to learn that, like, when we have like different flowers around, you will see like your honey has the different flavors of the flowers that are indicative of this area as well. So when you get your honey from the different parts of, let's say, Maryland or whatever area you're from, you will see that there's so many differences in just, it doesn't taste all the same. All honeys are different as well.
Oh man, and I'm getting hungry. That sounds so good. It looks great. And when I was actually researching, because we research our guests around here, we're very professional. And when I was researching your work, I was watching all of the videos that were produced by the White House, and I was just going through and looking at, and I was getting so hungry because everything looked so amazing. And one of the ones that I watched was about the France State Dinner, and I can only imagine how much there is to organize about the France State Dinner. Can you tell us a little bit about how you organized that?
Yes, the France State Dinner was, I think, the beginning of winter. It was February of this year, and it happened in the tent, so you could see how cold everything was around us. It was in the middle of the polar vortex of Washington, D.C., but we're able to get a lot of hothouse local vegetables around the neighborhood that we could use. We're able to get a lot of good products that are also available from just our cattle ranchers from Baltimore and whatever the closest area that we could get our things from. But to organize a state dinner, it takes a lot of planning, logistics. It takes a lot of really good brain power to make sure that, and math as well, because you're feeding about 400 people sit down, you multiply that by 4 courses at 1,600 plates that you have to dish up in a matter of like 7 minutes for each course, because it's only a 45-minute sit-down dinner. It gets pretty hectic, but we've done this so many times. We have orchestrated it a lot. We did a lot of practice, so everything is successful.
That's amazing.
Wow.
And I think we have a video of that about the France State Dinner, so let's check that out now.
State dinner, of course, is the highest honor that a host country could bestow to a visiting country. So like for the French dinner, what we want to do is show what the bounties of the Americas is like. We want to give our guests a taste of the kitchen garden. We were very fortunate that during the summer months, we had so much varieties of vegetables from the garden that we were able to pickle. Like, for example, we have the fennel, that we'll be using some hot peppers and some mustard and onion, the spring onion. So we're incorporating a lot of these pickles to some of our canapes and some of our salad. The First Lady's signature dish, we're calling it the Winter Garden Salad. This particular dish, it looks like a terrarium, and we're going to have like little tiny vegetables like carrots, radishes, cucumbers, and do not forget we also have the White House honey that we'll be using for our dressing. Our garden is not just a symbol of the First Lady's initiatives on good lifestyle and eating. This is actually a working platform, so it's a little representation of the kitchen garden, so it's really, really an awesome place.
There's a great history of French culinary and French pastry ties between France and America. One of the really signature and sort of important parts is going to be the petit fours. So we have chosen very typically American style cookies and chocolates. For example, we're making cotton candy and maple fudge, sort of the carnival type of sweets in America. And they're all going to be served on this amazing piece, which is poured sugar made to look like a marbleized bowl.
Here I have the petit four tray. I have made some hand pulled sugar flowers. The red one it symbolizes the American red rose, and then symbolized for France the purple iris. Each flowers are placed on each side of the platter. This will be a wonderful presentation for the guests.
Oh my gosh, that salad looks so beautiful and amazing. Everything looks fantastic. Oh, this is awesome. I'm loving it.
It's incredible.
And I can't even imagine all of the moving parts that are happening behind the scenes. Can you tell us how you get everyone to work together?
I think it's almost being like an orchestra leader, you have your baton, but you have to make sure that everyone is reading the same sheet of music because you want it to be all cohesive, you want it to be harmonious, You want it like towards the end of the day that we give the best product that we could possibly have. It's also like a ballet. Everybody has to know where their places are, where what their steps are, so that way we don't overstep each other's boundary. It's a real choreography in the back of the kitchen, but it's really such an amazing opportunity for us to showcase some of these wonderful garden vegetables during that time.
It really is. It's great. And I heard that you actually use like hand signals like in baseball to direct people. Is that true?
We kind of do because, like, during a dish up, we want to be as quiet as possible because, we want the guests not to hear, the kitchen chefs yelling at each other. So we have created just this kind of hand signal of like, okay, 5 minutes out. That means, 5 minutes before dish up. And then it's just a nod in the head and we look at each other. That means it's time. So somebody pulls out the plate and it's time to execute the dishes.
Wow,
That's fantastic.
yeah, the attention to detail is really great.
Yep. It's about letting people enjoy the food.
Yeah.
Yeah. Minimizing everything behind it. Very well done.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yep. Chef Chris, thank you so much for coming here and helping everybody build their own garden and for sharing the inspiring work at the White House Kitchen Garden.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me. This is really awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing it. It's been great. And please stay with us because we're going to have some questions for you right after this.
Of course.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are here with the White House Kitchen Gardens, and I want to jump on over to the counselors and see if we have any questions coming in.
Yeah, we've got our first question from Dave, who wants to know, what dish do you make that the first family really enjoys?
The dish that I make that the family really enjoys are pretty much whatever is available in the garden. I take my inspiration a lot from whatever's seasonal and whatever's growing. So it's not just one particular plate that they enjoy a lot. We try to incorporate as many vegetables and as many fruits as we can in their daily meals. So we go outside like pretty much at the beginning of the day to see what's growing and what's ready to be picked. And then we incorporate that for our daily recipe or our daily menu.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I would think that like the really fresh and easily available things would make the best dish of the day. But I want to know, are there any guilty pleasure foods? Are there do they love a good chocolate cake? Is it the vanilla ice cream?
I think there's nothing wrong with having a guilty pleasure food because, at the end of the day, we got to reward ourselves every now and then. There's nothing wrong with having a cookie or having a scoop of ice cream as long as it's in moderation and as long as it's not your lifestyle. If you have an ice cream, like towards the end of the week, it's good as long as you don't have it pretty much on a daily basis.
That's some good advice, and it's good to know that even the presidential family will have a guilty pleasure snack every once in a while. Let's jump back over to the counselors and see if we've got some more questions.
The campers are asking, what did you want to be when you were growing up, and what was the path that led you to the White House?
Okay, this is kind of funny because I do remember in the 3rd grade when people asked me what do I want to be when I grow up. I always say I wanted to be a nun because I watched Sally Field on the Flying Nun, and I thought it was really, really cool to fly. And it was kind of weird, but it was the flying that kind of got me. But then eventually, I guess growing up with a family of which food is such a central part of us. I have 10 brothers and sisters, and food pretty much is central. So I grew up exposed to a lot of food. My grandma and grandparents, they have their farm, they have their animals, and they have a fish pond that at any point in time, if you want to have fish or if you want to have chicken, as long as you get it in the backyard, she'll cook it for you. So I was so spoiled when it comes to my food experience as a child. And I think that's what kind of geared me up to becoming a chef later on in life.
And I know you didn't exactly always plan on going to culinary school. What was your path before that?
I went to the University of the Philippines. I took up Bachelor of Science in Food Technology. I came from a science school. It's called the Manila Science High School. Our sister school was the Bronx Science High School in New York. So it's kind of like you guys. We're the maker fair of, the Philippines. We love doing technologies and math and sciences. And I love the idea of food and science. So even though, as a high school student, food is such a big thing for me. But even with the sciences, I try to incorporate the two. So my path is, going to college, taking up food technology. Later on, when my family moved to the United States, I worked as a salad girl in one of the hotels in Chicago. When I moved to D.C., became a chef eventually of a fine dining room, and found my way to the White House later on.
I love that you can find a maker anywhere. That we can just we could go to the White House and we can find a tech nerd like over here. And everyone is a maker. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I want to jump back on over to those counselors and see what else y'all are asking.
We've got a question from Chris who wants to know, do the vegetables in the garden grow organically, and which fruits and vegetables grow best in DC?
All of our vegetables are grown, technically like with natural products. We don't use chemicals or fertilizers. So we try to make sure that however we grow our vegetables are done properly in a very good, sustainable way. And we try to use natural things. We don't use fertilizers, again, or any kind of chemical components. So we try to be as natural as we can when we try to grow our vegetables.
That's great. And have there been any vegetables that have surprised you as to how well they flourished? Or on the other side, things that you thought would go really well and then it ended up not being so great?
I think the first year that we planted the melon family, like the cantaloupes and the watermelon, we thought we're in the Washington, D.C. area. Cantaloupes are really, really a plenty here. They're beautiful. They're the thin-skinned variety, and it should flourish. It looked very nice. It smelled really good, but when it was time to harvest it, it didn't quite make it, so I did not know what went wrong with it. But then at the same time, you learn later on, what would be a good way to do it better. So later on, when we planted our cantaloupe, we gave it enough space from each other. So we learned again in the process of doing our gardening, things that could make it better. So we're learning, like what I said.
Yeah, and we had the same problem at my house when we first planted melons and squash, and it was just like, why are these things not? Oh man, it was a challenge. But then finally, we just changed things around a little bit, and it worked really well. So trial and error is a great gardening tip.
Yeah, and see if we have any questions from one of our affiliates.
Yeah, Bernie, do you have any questions? Oh, it looks like you're muted.
One question we have is, how do you prepare the menu?
How do I prepare the menu? I mean, that could be either for family meals. Of course, like what I mentioned earlier, we try to look outside and see what's beautiful and ready to be picked from the garden. We incorporate whatever is the harvest for the day with a wonderful protein that's also available and seasonal for us. So all of this we take into consideration when we're planning a menu. But then it's different for, let's say, when you have like out-of-state visit, let's say a heads of state visiting from a different country. We try to incorporate again whatever's available from the garden. But then at the same time, we want to give a nod to the country of origin. And, let's say it's somebody coming from the South African nations and they have wonderful vanilla that does not really grow here in the States. So we might use some of the Madagascar vanilla. So we would use different products that would be near and dear to those countries to honor them. So, but it would still be very American in nature.
It's great to see how much thought and work goes into the White House kitchen garden. I never would have even thought it. It's so great, and thank you so much for letting us peer into your world every day. I know that you're so busy, so thank you so much for taking the time to answer our questions and to chat with us. I've had just the best time. So really, really thank you, Chef.
Yes, no, it's a great honor for me, and thank you again. Anytime we could share the garden to you guys, let us know. It's a beautiful, beautiful garden. I wish you could be here today and see all of the vegetables in here.
I wish we could be too.
Yeah, next time I'll just find the technology to reach through the screen and grab some of it. And I'm going to definitely take those pickling tips home and try some of that out this summer. Dad, you're watching, so let's get that done later this afternoon.
Also, put honey on more things.
Ooh, yeah, honey on
that
more
was
honey
my
on
big
things
take-home
instead of the refined sugar. Definitely add more honey.
I'm definitely doing that.
Really, really, thank you, and everyone behind the scenes for working on this. It was just an absolute treat for our campers to be able to share this with you. And you know what? Next, I want to bring on another very special guest who's going to have a special message from the heart of Maker Camp. Please welcome founder and CEO of Maker Media, Dale Doherty.
I'm Dale Doherty, and we're at the Luther Burbank Experimental Farm, located in Sebastopol, California, not too far from where I live. And here you'll see all kinds of plants, trees, and fruits and vegetables that Luther Burbank had some hand in many, many years ago. I like to garden, which means growing fruits and vegetables. And when you start a garden, you not only get to decide which fruits and vegetables go in the garden, but which variety of that fruit or vegetable. And the fun part is that there's so many different varieties to choose from. I'm going to give you an example here today. I brought some fruits and vegetables to show you. Now, this is a potato. This is a different variety. It's a purple potato. So Wikipedia says there are over 5,000 varieties. Originally, a potato came from South America, and this is also called a Peruvian purple potato. But we have many different kinds that evolved in the wild, but also some came because people created them. They hybridized plants to create new plants. Luther Burbank was a plant inventor, and his first major invention was the potato. The Burbank potato, or sometimes called the russet potato today, was something that he created. One of the varieties of apples that's grown locally in Sebastopol is called the Gravenstein. They're a really tart and crisp apple that unfortunately didn't refrigerate particularly well, and most of the apples you find in stores are ones that do refrigerate well. Here are 4 varieties of peppers. This is just like a green pepper that you probably have seen at home, but it turns purple. But the taste is very mild. These 3 are hot peppers. When you break it open, it's the lining inside the pepper that has all the heat in it. When I first started a garden, I planted a row of radishes. Radishes are pretty easy to get started from seed. They grow pretty quickly, and you could even plant them now in August and get something before it gets too cold. A radish is spicy, a little bit like peppers, but not so hot. I still plant radishes today because they're kind of fun. Again, you could plant red radishes, white radishes, purple radishes. There's even a French breakfast radish, which the French prepare with butter for breakfast. So I hope I've demonstrated to you that there are many, many varieties of fruits and vegetables, and that's really what makes gardening so interesting, that you get to choose which variety you want to grow and see how it turns out. Well, that kind of variety is also true of making, and it's also why makers are so interesting. When you're doing a project, think of it as an experiment, and you want to take notes of that experiment and keep track of how it turned out along the way, not just at the end, but all the way through. That's something that Luther Burbank did. He kept notes of all the things he was growing so he could go back and keep track of that over many generations of plantings. So keep notes, take photographs, compile a journal of these notes so that you can write stories later on about your own experiments, your own projects, and share them with other people. From the Luther Burbank Experimental Farm, I'm Dale Doherty.
Thank you so much, Dale, for that fantastic video. And it really just, I can't think of a better way to end today's hangout. It was just beautifully done, and it really does show us how you can find a maker anywhere. Really, making is something that you carry with you, and you can apply it to so many different types of things. And I want to really thank the White House Kitchen Garden for being with us today. And I also really want to thank both of our affiliates. Thank you so much from Bernie, and thank you again from Santa Monica. Your spirit is so fun. We've had such a great time with you.
Be sure to stay with us all week here. We still have plenty exciting hangouts for you for the rest of Maker Camp.
Yeah, and remember, if you were inspired by anything you saw on the show today, do try this at home. Goodbye, campers.
Bye.